The first warship disappeared while every gun on Earth was still pointed at the ground. One moment, it was hanging over the moon like a second night. The next, it folded inward, without fire, without debris, without even a scream. Then Prince Kael Varos smiled into every camera on Earth and said, "Your border warning was a bluff." If stories like this hit you right in the chest, subscribe, like the video, and stay with me to the end, because this one doesn't just ask what humanity would do when the stars came for us. It asks what a son would do when the only person who could save the world was the mother he never forgave. For 200 years, Earth's warning had drifted at the edge of the solar system. A black satellite older than most nations. No flag, no weapon signature, no explanation. Just one message in 9,000 languages. Turn back. No claim may be made here. No warship may cross this line. Mourn your dead and leave. Most civilizations never tested it. The Vey Dominion did. Their Armada arrived in silence first. Thousands of needle-shaped destroyers, carriers like floating cities, sun-eater engines that turned darkness blue. They didn't ask for terms. They announced ownership. Mars first, lunar rail next, then Earth. When the warning buoy repeated its message, the Dominion fired on it for sport. The buoy didn't fire back. That was the part Prince Kael kept replaying for the human press. He was young for a butcher, beautiful in the cruel, polished way empires like to build their princes. White uniform, silver throat plate, black gloves that had probably signed death orders all morning. He stood on the bridge of the Radiant Crown, with vanished ships behind him on the tactical wall, and still looked amused. "3 ships lost to a spatial anomaly," he said. "Hardly a miracle. Humanity will surrender the architect of the warning network, or I begin reducing cities until someone finds the courage to be useful." Elias Vance watched that broadcast from the basement of a hospital in Boston, with his little sister asleep on his shoulder. The generators were coughing. Dust kept shaking from the ceiling. Above them, people were praying in 6 languages and blaming Earth's government in 12. Leora stirred and pressed her face into his jacket. She was 16, all sharp elbows and tired eyes, with the same dark hair their mother had, and the same stubborn silence their mother used like a weapon. "They're looking for her again," she whispered. Elias didn't answer. He didn't need to. Their mother's name had already started moving across the emergency ticker in broken red letters. Dr. Mira Vance, former lead designer, Outer System Signal Array. Status unknown. Unknown. Like she hadn't vanished 11 years ago. Like she hadn't left Elias at 21 with overdue rent, a terrified little sister, and one voice message he'd listened to exactly once because it hurt too much to hear again. Leora looked up at him. "If she's alive..." "She isn't." "You don't know that." "I know she left." The hospital lights flickered out. For 3 full seconds there was only breathing. Then the emergency bulbs came on, and every screen in the basement lit up with the same image. Prince Kael again. But this time he wasn't smiling. Behind him, hanging over the Atlantic, the Dominion had positioned a narrow black spear longer than Manhattan. The translation caught up a second later. Orbital Lance. City Breaker. "We will demonstrate sincerity," Kael said softly. "At dawn, this weapon will fire on your eastern seaboard, unless Elias Vance is delivered alive to my flagship. He will bring me through the line your mother built, or Earth will learn what the warning was really meant to fear." Every face in the basement turned toward Elias. That was the worst part. Not the panic, not the whispers, the recognition. As if the room had silently agreed that if one broken salvage pilot could be traded for millions, then maybe this was what sacrifice looked like. Leora stood up so fast the chair scraped backward. "No!" Her voice cracked, but she planted herself between him and the staring crowd anyway. "No one is taking him." Elias should have said something brave then, something older brother-shaped. Instead, he just sat there, numb and furious, because somewhere in the dark between Pluto and forever, the ghost of his mother had reached back into his life and put a gun to the planet's head. By sunrise, Earth's leaders had already chosen. They called it a negotiated transfer. They called it a humanitarian de-escalation. They called it the only path left. What it was, in truth, was public surrender. They brought Elias to the old UN plaza in a convoy of armored cars that looked pathetic beneath the Dominion gunships shadowing the clouds. Cameras were everywhere. Citizens screamed from behind barricades. Some shouted for him to run. More shouted for him to go. Leora had slipped past security twice before they finally held her back. He could still hear her voice by the time the black shuttle landed. "Elias!" He turned. She was fighting 3 security officers at once, face wet with tears, hair wild, looking younger than she had any right to look. "Don't help them!" she screamed. "Whatever she made, don't help them!" A guard pulled her hard enough to drop her to her knees. Elias lunged before he thought. The Dominion soldiers leveled weapons instantly. So did Earth's. For one insane second, the whole plaza froze around one terrified girl on the pavement. Then Prince Kale himself stepped down from the shuttle. He didn't look at the guns. He looked at Leora, then at Elias. "A useful weakness," he said. And that was how Elias knew Earth was already too late. They took him aboard the Radiant Crown in chains so light they felt insulting. The flagship was silent in the way predator dens are silent. Nothing unnecessary, everything polished, no wasted motion anywhere. Crew members moved like a single mind. Walls glowed faintly under black glass. The windows showed Earth turning slowly below, blue and helpless. Kale dismissed the guards and uncuffed him in a chamber overlooking the planet. "I expected someone more impressive," Kale said. "I expected someone older than a uniform." Kale smiled at that. "Good. I dislike frightened men." "You should hate yourself then." That smile thinned. "There is a line at the edge of this system," Kale said. "My ships cross it, and they vanish. No wreckage, no distress echo, no thermal bloom. Yet your people built the warning, which means your mother understood the mechanism. She built a signal buoy, not a god." Kale touched the glass, and the image changed. Leora appeared on it, alive, in a gray detention room, hands shaking, trying not to show it. Elias went cold. "Your sister has been moved to secure custody," Kale said. "She remains unharmed while you remain cooperative." Elias swung at him. Kale moved once. That was all. Elias hit the floor with a white flash of pain behind his eyes and Kale's boot on his wrist. "I'm trying," Kale said quietly, "to save my fleet from a mystery your family created. Do not make me solve my problem by turning your cities into mathematics." He removed his foot and stepped back. "Your mother left you something. We found it hidden in the old array archives after taking Luna." A small projection rose between them. A woman's face flickered into shape. Older than Elias remembered. Thinner, exhausted, but unmistakably her. Mira Vance. For a second he forgot how to breathe. "If you're seeing this," she said, voice rough with static, "then they came in hostile." Elias stared like hatred might protect him from grief. "They'll force you to help them," the recording continued. "Listen carefully. The warning was never meant to keep others away from Earth because we were weak. It was meant to keep them away because we were trusted." Cale leaned closer. "By whom?" he asked the recording, as if it could hear him. Mira's eyes seemed to meet Elias's instead. "Do not let them cross under arms. Do not let them map the inner coordinates. And if they bring a crown bearer, Elias, don't believe him when he says he wants peace." The message cut. Kael's jaw tightened. "Continue the file." "That was all," said the ship AI. Kael turned slowly. "You see my difficulty." Elias forced himself to stand. "You killed 500,000 people on Mars' orbit before breakfast, and now you want sympathy because my mother didn't leave good notes?" Kael ignored that. "Your mother mentioned a crown bearer. That is an imperial title restricted to the bloodline of the throne, which means she had prior contact with the Dominion." Elias frowned despite himself. Impossible. The warning had existed centuries before first contact. Kael saw the confusion in his face and knew it was real. That seemed to bother him more than any lie would have. "Prepare for translation," he said. "To where?" Kael's eyes hardened. "To the line. You're going to show me why my ships vanished." The journey to the border took 16 hours, long enough for Elias to realize 3 things. First, Kael was under pressure. Every hour, more encoded transmissions arrived from the Dominion core, and each one left the prince colder. Second, the missing Armada mattered personally. Kael reviewed those tactical losses himself at 3 in the morning, alone, not like a commander counting machines, but like a man trying to hear dead voices. And third, the Radiant Crown was not the entire invasion force. More ships were coming. A lot more. Halfway past Neptune, the first rescue carrier vanished. No flash, no alarm. Just a hole in formation where 2 million tons of warship had been. Then, a second. Panic rippled through the bridge for the first time. "Shields up! Interference rising!" "Negative," another officer shouted. "No energy spike, no mass displacement. It's like they were removed." Kael stood perfectly still. "Hold course." A lieutenant turned in disbelief. "Highness, we're bleeding ships." "That was an order." Elias felt it then. Not through the deck, through his teeth. A hum. Ancient and enormous. Like some impossible machine had finally noticed them. He moved to the forward glass. Ahead, the stars were wrong. The constellations near the ecliptic had begun to bend around an invisible circle, as if space itself were a pupil opening. And at the center of it floated something small. A station. Old human design, patched 1,000 times over. Rotating slowly in dark silence. Kael exhaled once. "Boarding team." "No," Elias said. Kael looked at him. "That's her," Elias whispered. "That's my mother." The station was colder inside than death. Lights failed in sections. Pipes sweated. Old Earth music crackled from a broken speaker somewhere deep in the spine. And through it all ran that same hum, stronger now, vibrating in Elias's ribs. He followed the emergency beacons into the core chamber with Kale and 6 armed guards behind him. Mira Vance was waiting beside a ring of machinery bigger than a cathedral bell. For a second, neither of them moved. She looked smaller than the woman he'd spent 11 years hating. Gray threaded through her hair. One arm was sleeved in old burn scars. Her eyes found his face and broke in a way he had never seen before. Elias. He stopped 10 feet away. Don't. The word came out rawer than he wanted. You don't get to say my name like nothing happened. Her throat worked. I know. Leora's face flashed in his mind. The basement, the empty years, rent notices, funerals, birthdays she had missed. A childhood she had abandoned halfway through and dressed up as duty. Kale stepped forward. Dr. Vance, I am Prince Kale Varos of the Vey Dominion. My fleet has entered this system and been taken. You will return them. Mira didn't even look at him. You brought a crown bearer anyway, she murmured. Then to Elias, very quietly. Did he tell you how many worlds his father burned to build that title? Kale's hand went to his sidearm. Explain this station. Mira finally faced him. This system is a prison lock. The guards shifted. Even Kale didn't interrupt. Mira gestured to the great ring behind her. It was studded with human repairs over something far older beneath. Metal that looked liquid under rust, symbols etched into it that made Elias's eyes sting if he stared too long. Before humanity crawled out of the oceans, something came through this region, she said. Not a species, a hunger. It moved through civilizations by giving them exactly what they wanted: power, certainty, dominion. And when they took it, their minds opened it wider. The builders who stopped it anchored the lock to this star and left one rule in every relay. No empire may enter armed. Kale laughed once, unbelieving. You expect me to accept mythology while my fleet disappears? Your fleet isn't disappearing, Mira snapped. It's being held at threshold because your intent triggered containment. Elias stared at the warped stars outside. Held where? In a layered fold around the heliopause. Time moves differently there. To them, minutes. To us, enough to decide if they come back sane. Sane, Kale said. Mira's silence was answer enough. One of the guards suddenly screamed. Everyone spun. He had torn off his helmet. Blood ran from his nose. His eyes were fixed on empty space. They're here, he whispered. The children from Elir. I saw them on the hull. Then his bones seemed to lose shape. He collapsed like a suit with nobody inside it. The room went dead quiet. Mira closed her eyes. That's why the warning says, mourn your dead and leave. Kale's face drained of color for the first time. What did you do to my men? I did nothing. The lock reflects moral mass. Every atrocity, every conquered world, every civilian burned by imperial decree. Your people meet it there. The threshold doesn't kill with lasers, Prince. It makes invaders stand where their victims stood. Elias looked at Kale. He didn't see arrogance now. He saw fear. But only for a second. Then the prince buried it. Then we break the lock. Mira stepped in front of the control ring. If you destabilize it, the threshold ruptures into the inner system. Kale drew his weapon. And if I don't, my father arrives, with enough force to crack every planet from Mercury to here. Elias turned to her. You knew they were coming? Mira looked at him, and there it was. That unbearable mixture of love and guilt. We intercepted Imperial probes 40 years ago. They had records from older ruins. They knew this system held something ancient. The warning was revised for them specifically. You left us for that? I left because someone had to stay. You chose a machine over your kids. No, she said, and her voice broke. I chose every kid. He hated that answer, because part of him understood it. Kale lowered his weapon slightly. Open the threshold. I recover my Armada. Earth survives. You recover your Armada, Mira said. And your empire uses this lock as a weapon. Don't insult me with bargains. Kale's calm erupted. A harsh male voice filled the chamber. Kale. Every soldier in the room straightened instantly. Emperor Solm. Even over static, he sounded like a blade pulled slowly from velvet. You have delayed long enough, the Emperor said. If the lock can be controlled, secure it. If not, destroy the star and purge the system. Elias felt the blood leave his face. Mira stared at Kale. And suddenly, everything in her hidden message made sense. Don't believe him when he says he wants peace. Kale cut the transmission too late. The damage was done. You knew, Elias said. Kale didn't answer. You knew from the start this wasn't rescue. Kale's expression didn't change, but something old and ugly moved behind his eyes. My father doesn't send me to rescue, he said quietly. He sends me to prove I deserve my name. Mira laughed once, bitter and tired. So you came to steal a prison key from a dead species and call it glory. Kale raised the gun again. Then Leora appeared on the wall screen. Not a recording. Live. She was kneeling in that same gray room, but now a Dominion officer stood behind her with a blade at her throat. Kale had not ordered that feed. Elias knew it by the look on his face. The Emperor had. Final instruction, Psalm said over the channel. Open the lock, my son, or I begin with the girl. Something inside Elias tore. Leora! She looked up, hearing him through whatever link the Emperor had forced open. Her face crumpled with relief and terror at once. Elias, don't! The blade pressed closer. Mira moved toward the console. Elias caught her arm. If you do this, he takes everything. If I don't, she whispered, staring at her daughter on that screen. He kills her first. There are moments when the entire universe narrows to one impossible choice. Not world versus world. Not duty versus love. Love against love. Save your child, or save everyone else's. Elias looked at his mother and, for the first time in 11 years, saw not the woman who had abandoned him, but the woman who had been standing alone between humanity and a cosmic wound for more than a decade, carrying the kind of guilt that hollows people out from the inside. He also saw Leora, 16, terrified, alive. He made his choice before he knew he had. Open it, he said. Mira turned to him in disbelief. Elias! I'm not losing her. Kale watched him with something like recognition. Maybe because beneath all the metals and coldness, He was still just another son chained to a father's cruelty. Mira's eyes filled. "Once it opens," she said, "someone has to anchor the lock manually from inside the threshold, or it tears all the way open." Elias understood immediately. "No." She touched his face the way she used to when he was little and sick and pretending not to be scared. "It has to be me." He grabbed her wrist hard enough to hurt. "No, you do not get to disappear again." For one heartbeat, she smiled, the saddest smile he had ever seen. Then Cale shot her. The sound inside that chamber was small. That was what made it monstrous. Mira staggered once, hand pressed to her stomach, shock all over her face, as if even after everything she had seen, betrayal still had the power to surprise her. Elias caught her before she hit the floor. Cale's voice shook, but the gun stayed steady. "Open it." "You just shot the only person who could help you." "I shot the only person who would never obey." Mira's blood was hot on Elias's hands. She was trying to speak. He bent close. "Listen to me," she whispered. "Node 7, Crown-bearer blood. It can anchor too." He stared at her. Cale heard. His eyes widened. Mira coughed, red at the corner of her mouth. "I'm sorry," she said. "Not for leaving. Not for the years. For all of it. For the whole unbearable shape of being their mother in a universe like this one." Elias broke then. Actually broke. He pressed his forehead to hers and sobbed like he hadn't since he was a child, while the machine hummed louder and the stars outside kept warping, and Cale stood there with a gun and an empire behind him, and Leora still on that screen, waiting to find out whether love would save her or kill everyone else. Mira died in his arms before he could answer. Cale moved first. He lunged for the console. Elias rose with Mira's blood all over him and hit him so hard they both smashed into the ring controls. Guards rushed forward. One was thrown back by a pulse of blue light. Another vanished from the waist up as if bitten out of reality. Alarms detonated across the station. The threshold was opening. Outside the viewport, the dark around the solar system peeled apart. Ships appeared in layers. Dominion dreadnoughts, half-phased, twisted, drifting with their lights still on. Some were intact. Some looked old. Some carried burn marks shaped like hands. From every deck came screaming. Cale shoved Elias off and slammed his bleeding palm onto the central node. Nothing. He looked at Mira's body, then at Elias. "Her bloodline," he said. Elias understood too late. Cale didn't need Mira. He needed Elias. They fought like animals. No technique left. No elegance. Just grief and rage and metal flooring slick with blood. Cale was stronger, trained from birth, but Elias had nothing left to preserve, and men like that become dangerous in ways strategy can't predict. He headbutted Cale, tore the blade from a fallen guard, pinned the prince against the ring. On the wall screen, Leora was still there, crying openly now, shaking her head. "Elias, please!" Cale looked from the blade at his throat to the opening threshold beyond the glass. Then he laughed, breathless and broken. "You think killing me saves her? My father will vaporize your planet before my body cools." Elias wanted to do it. God, he wanted to. But Mira's last words were still burning in him.
Crown-bearer blood. Anchor, too. That was the real choice. Not revenge. Never revenge. He released the blade and jammed Kale's hand into the node. The machine flared. Kale screamed. Symbols erupted up his arm like molten silver veins.
What are you doing? Using you. Elias drove him toward the core aperture as the threshold howled open. No! Kale fought now with real terror, digging heels into steel. You can't! My sister, Elias said through his teeth, is alive because I haven't killed you yet. Don't make me regret that. He shoved the prince into the anchoring cradle. It clamped shut around Kale's arms and spine before either of them could change their minds. The ring stabilized instantly. Outside, the drifting Armada stopped tearing itself apart. The screaming on open channels changed. Not gone, changed. Like drowning men finding surface. Kale strained against the cradle, panic cracking his voice. Get me out! You said you wanted to save your fleet. The truth hit him then. Anchor from inside meant becoming the living key. Maybe forever. Maybe until death. Kale's face twisted with horror, then rage, then something else Elias hadn't expected. Shame. My father sent my brother first, he said suddenly, words ripping out of him. To another lock, on another frontier. He vanished too. Solm knew. He always knew the cost. Elias froze. Kale laughed once, tears in it now. I wasn't proving myself. I was replacing him. Across the chamber, the Emperor's channel came alive again. Kale? The prince looked toward the voice like a starving boy hearing home. Then his expression changed. Something hardened. Something finally, terribly adult. Signal the fleet, Kale said. Elias stared. Do it, Kale snarled. Before I change my mind. Elias opened the broadcast. Kale lifted his head, every inch a prince again, but not his father's. This is Crown Prince Kale Varos. By authority of the living key, all Dominion forces will withdraw beyond the heliopause immediately. The Emperor ordered this system purged despite full knowledge of threshold conditions. You were sent here as expendable mass. The bridge channels exploded with voices, officers shouting, captains demanding confirmation. Then Emperor Solm's voice cut through all of them like a whip. Kale, stand down. Kale closed his eyes for 1 second. When he opened them, there was a child's wound in them, and a man's hatred built over it. No. Solm's voice went quiet. That was worse. You ungrateful thing. Kale smiled through blood. I learned from you. The transmission died. Seconds later, Dominion ships began breaking formation. Then more. Then almost all of them. The largest carriers turned first, then destroyers. Then the black lances over Earth peeled away from firing position and climbed back into the dark. A cascade of disbelief ran across every open human channel in the system. They were leaving. Kale sagged in the cradle as the machine consumed more of him. Silver light had reached his neck now. His hands were no longer fully human shapes. Elias stepped closer. You can still come back, he said, though he didn't know if it was true. Kale gave him a tired look. You and I both know men like me don't come back. We just stop where our fathers pointed us. On the wall screen, Leora was gone. The detention room empty. Released, Elias prayed. Or forgotten in the chaos. He would take either. Kale looked past him toward Mira's body on the floor. Did she really watch over this place alone all these years? Yes. He swallowed hard. Then your empire wasn't the only monstrous thing in this story. Elias almost laughed at that, because it was true. Heroes don't always look kind from up close. Sometimes they look like mothers who left. Sometimes they look like sons who can't forgive them until it's too late. The threshold dimmed. The stars slowly returned to their proper places. The Armada that had come to own Earth limped out of the solar system under the command of the very prince sent to enslave it. And in the station beyond Pluto, Elias sat beside his mother's body and waited for the first clear signal from home. It came 6 hours later. Not from governments, not from generals, from Leora. Her face filled the console, blurry with tears and bad connection, and relief so huge it made her look lightheaded. He didn't say anything at first. Neither did she. Some griefs are too fresh for language. Finally, she whispered, "Is she gone?" Elias looked at the still form beneath the emergency blanket. Yes. Leora nodded once, trying and failing to be brave. Then she asked the question that mattered more than all the others. Did she save us? Elias thought about the empty chair at every birthday, the voice message he'd only heard once, the blood on the station floor, the warning buoy repeating itself into endless dark for centuries so that arrogant men would have one last chance to turn around. And he thought about Kale, trapped in light, holding shut a door his father wanted opened. Yes, Elias said, his voice cracked. Yes, she did. Earth rebuilt slowly after that. That's the part stories usually rush through, but they shouldn't. Because survival is not a single glorious moment. It is long, ugly, expensive. People still argued over whether Mira Vance was a hero or a monster. Some called Kale a war criminal. Some called him the man who saved our species. Elias never joined those arguments. He spent a year helping repair the outer relays. Then another, carrying supply runs to the border station. Leora came with him on the first anniversary. They stood together before the old black buoy, while the message played again into the void. Turn back. No claim may be made here. Mourn your dead and leave. Leora squeezed his hand. Do you think anyone will listen now? Elias looked out at the stars beyond the line, at the dark where empires had once seen weakness and found judgment instead. Only the ones worth letting in. And somewhere beyond sight, a prince who had been born to inherit the universe remained inside the lock, holding it closed with the very bloodline that had once tried to conquer it. That was the part that stayed with Elias most. Not that Earth had been protected by some ancient machine. Not that an empire had fled. But that in the end, the border held because two broken children of cruel parents chose, at the last second, not to become them. Some victories don't sound like cheering. Some sound like a gunshot in a cold room. A mother's last apology. A sister still breathing. A monster's son saying no. And if there was any mercy in the stars at all, maybe that was enough. Because the Empire did come back, years later, with diplomats instead of cannons. They stopped at the line. They asked permission. And for the first time in a very long time, the warning did not need to repeat itself. Some borders are not drawn to keep others out. They are drawn to remind power that it is not God. Tell me in the comments, if saving the world meant losing the person you loved most, would you still open the gate?